What are your thoughts on Jesus himself? Was he a real person, and are his teachings important and integral to what's going on right now?
Well, that's a very interesting question. When I look at things as far as on a religious level or as steps on the ladder, as long as you don't stop, then you'll get somewhere. So a lot of these things are wholesome principles that anyone should follow. And you find a lot of those things written in the spiritual texts, Psalms, Proverbs. These are, wise sayings. There's been wise sayings since the beginning of time. What I do know for sure, however, is that there's an extreme agenda around the Christian faith, just in relation to energy management systems, meaning utilizing people's energy to power other things, projections. And I find that the Christian faith is many times tied into that. Now, whether Jesus actually walked or not, I guess what people will have to realize is that there were several messianic characters throughout history, not just the 13 crucified saviors or whatever they talk about in Zeitgeist, but many individuals that literally walked a path of going from the process of basically a regular person to total realization. Now, if that person said that they were the only one and the begotten and all that kind of stuff, then that means they must have been ignorant to many of the old laws, because before these stories came up, there were much more ancient versions. And most of these stories are plagiarized from those versions. And also they have a lot of inaccuracies. And the reason for this is also you have to realize when you're developing a nation, like the people who are responsible for developing nations know the key components to developing those nations. And in many cases, they've learned those components from nations that are either still here or have crumbled. And one of the major things that you have to add when you're building a nation is to have a religion. So in the United States, when they were concocting their version of the religion, they decided to go with the Brahmin and Saraswati story, which is what we call the Abrahamic tradition, him and his wife Sarah. And then they threw in a bit of the Kemetic tradition with the horse god and his mother Ma'at and sitting on the lap in their father Ra. And they decided to mix in some things. But then remember that this religion went out to mostly slaves. So it could not be, let's say, for instance, if you look at the Kemetan tradition, all of the entities from the Kemetan pantheon are actually melanin dominant or black. So you can't actually make, let's say in the United States, you can't make the God that everyone's supposed to be worshiping black if you're going to give that same religion to the slaves that need to do the working. Because if they keep looking at this God that's the same color as them, they're going to start asking, why am I actually doing this work? It's just a psychological thing. So religions are often used to oppress groups of people. So in addition to that, you also find that in any culture, let's say the Greeks took the entire Egyptian tradition and stylized it verbatim pretty much as far as their gods. But the reason why they didn't make them Egyptians is because it was for the Greeks. You see, so what religions are they're more or less necessary components to societies. They generally tell core stories that are found within the stars and passed on by the elders. And generally the characters are stylized as close as possible to the populace or the groups of people that it's being given to. So that way they feel some closer kinship to it. So, did Jesus the Christ actually exist? I don't believe so. Did John the Baptist actually exist? Yes, I do believe so. And what we find in meaning also as John the Baptist as several different characters and a part of a much more deeper rooted tradition, which actually connects in with Gnosticism. It even connects in with the Knights Templar. It even connects in with Baphomet and Baphometism or baptism. Okay. So that tradition would be more able to trace, it'd be more easier to trace an actual, a real live person that was involved in that, because you even start getting more into Pythagoras at a certain point and people that actually have recorded accounts in history. So the Jesus story is more or less a segue from those traditions in order to kind of create something a bit new, but not so new, if you know what I mean.